Hey guys, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. Hope you're all doing awesome today, and it's time for more stories of people getting exactly what they deserve. So let's get into it, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't yet for more content like this. Here we go. Bag of nails. I am a dry liner, which means I do a lot of moving around for my trade, as most of the work I do is towards the end of most projects. This means that I spend a lot of my time renting flats and houses for only short periods, usually about 6 months at a time. This has meant that I have had to deal with a lot of landlords over the years, both good and bad. When it comes to the bad landlords, I will normally just walk away and get on with moving to the next job, and take the loss of my deposit and never use them again if I am working in that area in the future. But this particular landlord got my back up so badly I was not just going to walk away. I had managed to get myself onto a big job in London working on the new Wembley Stadium, so I decided I would look for a house to rent rather than a flat, as I know I was going to be working on it for a while, and found a reasonably priced, for London, house to rent, from a private landlord in a local newspaper. I gave him a call and met with him later that day. He seemed okay, went to view the house, paid him the deposit, cash, and moved in that weekend. I ended up staying in the house for nearly a year with no problems. Always had the rent paid into his bank account on time, and fixed any small problems that might crop up with the house myself, without bothering him. Up to the time when it came to moving out, I only ever spoke to him twice on the phone, after there was an issue with the heating that I was unable to fix myself, and he sent an engineer around the next day to fix the boiler. Come the time that the job was finishing, I went around to the pawn shop that he owned to give him notice that I would be moving out the following month, and to let him know that I was happy for him to come around to inspect the house before I moved out, so that I could get my deposit back from him when I returned the keys. He never came around while I was in to inspect the house, and so I assumed that he had come around and let himself in while I was at work, as I had told him that I had no issue with him doing that if need be. So on the day I moved out, I went around to the shop and handed him his keys back and asked for my deposit. His response was, "What deposit?" "The month's rent that I gave you in advance of moving in as a security deposit," I replied. He then told me he was keeping that to cover the cost of repairing damages caused while I was living in the property. I responded, "What damages?" With the bits of work and decorating I had done on the house, it was in a better state now than when I had moved into it. His response was to step forward, get right up into my face, and say, "You're not getting it back, so f*** off." And he then gave me a shove, which needed me to take 3 steps back to avoid falling on my arse. Now, I am what you would class as average size and build, and this landlord had a good 4 inches on me height-wise, and obviously spent some time down in the gym. And the wise move would be to back away and cut my losses. Now, before I was a builder, I was a member of the British Army in a regiment called the Royal Green Jackets, and they had trained us that the best way to proceed when confronted with aggression is to meet it swiftly and with much more violent aggression. So without even thinking about it, I started to move forward with the full intention of dropping this twat quickly and painfully. After the first step though, a thought popped into my head like a bolt from the blue. So I stopped and took a moment to examine the idea from a few different angles, and I said, "Okay, bye," to my now ex-landlord and walked out of his shop. What the landlord did not know was that I had a spare back door key cut when I lived in the house, which I had stashed in my van in case I ever lost the keys, so I could still get back in. So later that evening, I let myself back in, and decided to stop for one last night before leaving in the morning for my next job, which was in Scotland. I spent the last night in the house carefully removing every bit of wood in there. I took down doors, removed skirting boards, banisters, architrave, and floorboards, being extremely careful not to damage anything. I also completely dismantled all the kitchen units, took up the wood flooring and carpets. I then left everything in nice neat piles in each room. I got in my van the next morning and was preparing to start my drive, when I decided I wanted to rub a little more salt into my ex-landlord's wounds. So I stopped at his shop on the way out of London, got a spare hammer, screwdriver, bag of nails, and box of wood screws out of the back of my van, and went into the shop. My ex-landlord was not there, probably for the best, so I left the tools with his confused-looking assistant, and told her to tell her boss, "You will be needing these," and left for my drive north. I had my phone switched off while driving, and a few hours later, while I was having a bite to eat in a service station up by Nottingham, I decided to switch it back on, and was greeted by a string of text messages and some very colorful voice messages, which left me chuckling to myself. I did reply to one of the texts he sent me. The text was, "Do you think you're effing funny leaving me nails and screws?" I responded, "Yes." So if I understood that correctly, I guess all the stuff that OP dismantled was the work that OP himself did on the house. He still lost his deposit, so I guess he just figured, you know what, in that case, I'll just undo the work I did on the house that would have brought up the value. In this kind of situation, I suppose you just take whatever kind of win you can get. How I got a car dealership to give my friend a newer car. Circa 2020 January. My friend makes a stupid decision and buys a brand new car he can't afford. His insurance is like $400 a month. He makes like $10.25 an hour working as a shift supervisor at McDonald's. His car payment is like $795 a month. Now at $10.25 an hour, 30 hours a week, that's a weekly income of about $300 a week, or about $1,230 a month. So yeah. So my friend came to me for help because I used to sell cars and know the industry pretty well. I go over his paperwork. The dealer did rip him off, but my friend is trying to find a way to get out of this mess. And ripping someone off isn't illegal. They did, of course, overcharge him for warranty. They gave him a higher APR, they had add-ons, etc. But none of that is illegal, and I know the only way I can get my friend out of this deal is if they did something illegal. So I look at his finance application that my friend signed. It correctly listed his income, which turned a light bulb on in my head. No bank is going to approve someone for a $795 car payment if they are only making $1,200 a month. It does not make mathematical sense to do that. So I start searching through his paperwork for the finance app the dealer submitted to the bank. Oftentimes when you submit a finance application at a dealership, the dealership will take the hand-filled out application and reproduce it electronically. This is pretty normal. However, on the application the dealer submitted to the bank, the dealer said my friend was a GM of the McDonald's and made $70K. My friend had good credit, so it doesn't appear like the bank asked for proof of income. So I go to the dealership with my friend and tell the sales manager he's going to want to put me in touch with the GM because we are going to be unwinding my friend's deal and giving his trade-in back. The sales manager thought I was joking. The GM also thought I was joking. Then I demonstrated how his dealership finance department committed bank fraud. I then showed the GM the finance app his dealership submitted to the bank and pointed at the income difference. My friend really made $14K a year. The dealership claimed my friend made $70K a year. That's bank fraud. That's a felony. Let's keep this simple, shall we? The GM sees his dealership is in a load of shit. The proof I am presenting to him is rock solid. He knows it, I know it, we are all on the same page. He goes, "Okay, so what can I do to make this right?" I go, "Unwind the deal. Give my friend his trade-in back." Unwinding the deal is basically the GM agreeing to cancel the deal, and basically erasing the deal and pretending it never happened. GM tries to avoid that, but I remain firm and remind him, we can easily take this documentation and turn his life into a living hell. He knows I'm right. My friend also needs a car to get to work the next day. The GM says he'll check into it. He comes back and tells me, unfortunately, they sold his trade-in already. I said, that's fine. Unwind the deal and let's put my friend into something as good or slightly better than what he traded in for. So the GM goes, so he'll buy a car similar to his trade-in? I said, no, you'll give him a car similar to his trade-in. The GM goes, it doesn't work that way. I go, it does when you commit bank fraud. GM is upset with me, and I remind him I'm being really nice, and this situation can totally get really ugly. Like felony level charges ugly. Like losing your franchise ugly. So yeah, this is going to hurt, but it's going to hurt less my way. So the GM goes, alright, and he looks in his inventory and he tells me, they have a 2007 Focus with 10K more miles. I tell him, no, the car you give my friend needs to be the same, or better than what he traded in. The GM counters, I'm giving him a free car. And I go, no, you took his trade-in, you sold it, you made money on that sale. You also committed a felony in the process of selling him his new car. You are now correcting that mistake. This isn't a free car for my friend. This is a you are correcting your mistake. GM insists that's what he's willing to do. I tell him if he can't do better than that, we will go to a consumer protection attorney and have a conversation with them. My friend didn't want to go this route, but it was our plan B. We get up. The GM says, wait, give me a second. The GM goes, I have a 08 Civic. It has 5K more miles, but it's a Civic and not a Focus. I unwind the deal on the new car and put your friend in the Civic at no extra cost. We agree. GM has the paper drawn up. The old loan on the new car is canceled. They take in the new car again, but because it's already titled, they'll have to sell it as used. That sucks for them. And they gave my friend a better car than the one he traded in. For people asking why we didn't get a lawyer involved from the start, we could have done that, but courts take a long time, and this was a faster way to fix the situation. Yeah, honestly, these guys went very easy on the dealership. Like OP said, it could have been a lot worse for them. For a car dealership, the amount of money that they lost from this situation probably isn't even that much. And for a business going as far as to commit bank fraud to try to go ahead with the sale, yeah, they would have definitely deserved to actually get into legal trouble for that if it actually came to it. But yeah, I guess the important thing is that OP actually won. And in the end, OP's friend ended up with a better car than he began with. So I'd still call it a win. Harass my counter clerk equals get banned, arrested, and towed. I was 18 and in my first managerial job, i.e. swing shift manager at a fast food burger joint. Like every place, we had a couple of usuals who were a-holes for the sake of being a-holes. One of them, an over-the-top, egregiously aggressive woman who found fault with everything, would go ballistic if you so much as failed to address her as ma'am in every sentence. Things came to a head when she was so rude to one of our counter clerks that she made the girl cry. I told the girl to go back to the break room and take a breather, and then calmly informed the woman that she was no longer welcome in our store. That triggered the nuclear option. I waited for the screaming and cursing to stop, waved her to the door, and then watched as she left. I sent corporate her credit card number and license plate info, and they sent her a "you're banned from all the stores" letter, filed it with the local PD, and told us to call the cops immediately if she ever showed up in our store again. Which she did. A few weeks later, she showed up ready to launch into another tirade for whatever imagined offense might occur. We politely kicked her out, despite her screaming that the do not trespass order was fake, wasn't legal, didn't apply to her, her lawyer said. It happened again a couple of times, but eventually her luck broke, and there happened to be 2 cops on their dinner break in the restaurant. I was on shift that night, and I can tell you that I have rarely been so satisfied as when I showed the officers the order, identified the woman as the person referred to in it, told them about the frequent return visits, and then watched them arrest her on the spot. Best of all, I never had to testify. She went totally ballistic and scratched a cop's face. No need to book her for trespassing when resisting arrest and cop assault were so convenient. After they hauled her away, I noticed that her car was still in our lot. Oh yes, that call to the towing company was the most satisfying 2 minutes of my young life. Sure, I could have just let it sit there until she came back for it, but make my register clerk cry? Yeah, enjoy your trip to the impound lot, ma'am. Make false accusations, lose your business. I used to work at a small mid-sized law firm. At the time, there were 10 lawyers, including the owner. His setup was basically to do as little work as possible and just take a cut from the rest of us as independent contractors. He was very much a "it doesn't matter what they can afford, bill as much as you can" type scumbag. One thing the firm handled was real estate law. I rarely looked after any real estate transactions, save maybe 2 or 3 per year over the 2 years I worked there. At the time, he decided to let me go. He made a list of reasons, all of which were fabricated. Client complaints, missed court dates, etc. It came down to me asking for a bigger cut, and him not wanting to have to pay it. I felt it wasn't worth going after him in court. However, shortly after my contract was terminated, I was reviewing my insurance and stumbled upon the fact that no less than 60 real estate transactions were filed with my bar under my name. Well, one of the rules where I practice is that in a situation like this, my name has to be on the retainer agreement, and I have to have worked on the file in some capacity. So having a friend or two at the firm who were practically 1 foot out the door already, I got many of the phone numbers for these clients that weren't mine, and asked for a copy of their retainer for my records. Most of them had no problem sending a copy. Obviously, I was on none of them. I quickly contacted the bar association. The whole thing ended up being a mess for this guy. Besides an intensely scrutinized audit, it turned out that he had done this for every lawyer in the firm. He eventually was ordered to pay an absolutely insane fine. Think high six figures, and had his license suspended for a few years. The firm shut down and he never went on to practice again. Felt good. That's just great, isn't it? A law firm trying to scam people who are also lawyers. Surely nothing could go wrong with that. Alright guys, so that's going to be it for today's stories. If you enjoyed, drop a like, and also subscribe to the channel for more Reddit shenanigans. So I'm out of here everyone, take care, have a beautiful day, and I'll see you in the next one.